Welcome back. Now let's get a look at how these markets are certainly looking. It's been a mixed picture out in Asia as most of that Asian market returns back to some progressive market movement there. Of course, the Shanghai Composite had been closed for that Golden Week holiday, back up today and headed into some positive territory there, 1.7% to the good, in fact, there for the Shanghai Composite. The Hang Seng as well as the Nikkei going down, unfortunately, not enjoying itself on that front. Over onto the European market, pretty much a similar picture as well. Only the DAX out in Germany had gone up 0.1%, with the FTSE 100 and the CAC 40 then struggling, not necessarily struggling, but actually headed up into some positive territory. 0.5% to the good for the FTSE 100 out in London. That's more than 31 points gained on that front. On the local index, well, we're up today. We're up 0.2%. In fact, 0.66% higher. One of the big gainers there, resources being pressed up by gold miners, which have ticked up 3.7% today. So enjoying some gains there, while also 1.35% up for platinum counters as they go to 74 points. Positive gains as well for industrial shares as they went up to 74,507 points there, or more than 0.8% to the good on that front. But unfortunately, negativity then for the banking counters as that comes through to the financial counters overall. SA properties also continuing to languish, more than 1% weak over there. Overall, in terms of the stock front, what exactly has gone up and gone down? Well, on the upside, Roynet, Montauk and Grindrod have certainly headed a whole lot higher. Grindrod taking more than 5% gains, still at R4.34 a share there. Let's consider the fact that construction has certainly been battered and bruised over the last year or so. In terms of going down, the likes of Lighthouse, the retail company, going down there. Cartrack, Coronation, as well as Vugile, all suffering as well. More than 3% lost across the board on that front. Onto the commodities board then, weakness as well for the Brent crude price that sits at 0.8%. One would have thought that with the increased, should we say, expectation of another storm out at the Gulf of Mexico, that perhaps things would have gone higher. Unfortunately, it's gone the other direction then by the seams of things. It's now sitting at just below that $43 a fine ounce mark, or a barrel mark, should I say, over there. Platinum counters, those go up 2.33%, $881 a fine ounce there, $1,917 a fine ounce for the gold mark. Hasn't hit those numbers in quite some time as well, up 1.25%. Silver also enjoying some positivity. This, despite it looking red, is actually positivity for the South African currency. So we've gone up today, 0.7%, better mark at 16 Rand and 46 cents against the US dollar. Talking about the greenback, well, against the euro then, we're now sitting at 19 Rand and 42 cents. That's more than a third better off, with the British pound also set to cost you 21 Rand 31 cents. That's 0.5% better off than today. Warwick Lucas from Galileo Capital joining us as well, as we usually get on this Friday afternoon. Warwick, the market's taking it all in today. Donald Trump and all his issues, as well as the Iran picture coming back to the flow. It seems that markets are a little bit mixed overall.
Good afternoon, Arabile. Yes, certainly a messy picture. Lots of noise, as we would expect at US election time, with whatever theme of the day is deemed most appropriate finds its way onto the table. Certainly quite a few issues coming to the fore there. And of course, the whole question of stimulus packages, of course, looming very large as well. And I mean, that's been a real to and fro, of course.
Yeah, and in getting all of this done as well, we see the Iran sanctions, and this time against their financial sector. Is that set to impact markets at all, do you think? Or is that just another ploy, of course, that happens to tighten the grip on Tehran just weeks before the US elections?
I would have thought taking a tilt at Iran is a relatively, shall we say, cheap shot. I mean, they've been out of the picture for quite some time, so I would just assign normal electioneering, and I dare say some kind of normality will follow thereafter once November is out of the way. So I'm not putting too much store by it.
Yeah. All right. We'll see how that fares over on that front. We also then get the equity picture on the local front, the likes of PPC coming out with a set of earnings. We couldn't have expected things to look good here, and they certainly aren't looking good.
Well, yeah. I mean, ordinarily, I would have thought that PPC was on a flight path out of the position its balance sheet was in, but of course, along came COVID. Now, cement businesses are usually, as long as the economics are okay, reasonably cash generative, albeit that they can from time to time being capital hungry businesses. And indeed in past years, PPC had invested quite a lot in new plant and so on, and had built up a bit of a debt. I think it's got itself in the position where it's got a lot of debt maturing in the next year or so. And of course, this isn't the greatest environment for that to be happening. So that, of course, has raised questions about what's going to happen as far as going concern goes. So the key issue is that the government, that this business needs to take its short-term debt profile. It has to get itself refinanced so that it's a longer-term debt profile. And certainly in an ordinary environment, I would have said that this business could quite easily service the debt it has. But things being what they are, obviously holders of capital are much more pernickety right now, and obviously quite a major exercise then, meaning that they have to refinance that to obviously deal with those auditor issues where they emphasized certain matters.
Yeah. What happens, though, to Vodacom? I mean, they're fighting for a license out in Lesotho. One wouldn't say that's the biggest market that they could certainly get into, but I guess it'll help, right?
Well, absolutely it would help. I mean, notwithstanding the relative size of Lesotho against the SABC as a whole, it's still an important market. So, for example, earnings before tax for Vodacom, they're in the order of 600 million rand. The contribution to Lesotho's fiscus is about 300 million rand. And it's also the M-Pesa mobile money solution is used by something like 800,000 people, or 40% of its population. And I think this really draws us to the fore of the issues here. And that is that cellular companies are very large in order to be successful. They have to be in order to get the recovery on the expensive capital that they outlay. And in many ways, they can be seen to be political players by governments. And it's very important to keep their noses clean and to make sure that they don't become targets. And unfortunately, Vodacom, with the auditing issues that it had there in terms of some conflicts of interest, which to first glance to me looked relatively minor. A molehill has been turned into a mountain here, and I think a bit of deft negotiation is required for a reset between the two players there.
It's going to get interesting. That telecom space always seems to cook up a new debacle ever so often. Warwick, appreciate the time. That's all we have time for then today. Thank you so much for joining us here on Point Them. Warwick Lucas from Galileo Capital. That brings things to an end here at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Thank you so much for joining us. My colleagues, Naledi Matlapeng, Diabo Setu, as well as Nastasia Aronsa, join you after this for everything from SME on Point right through to Books on Point as well. All that and more coming up. At the top of the hour, though, my colleague Nzinga Kunta will take you through the day's latest breaking news. Do stay tuned to SABC News. This is On Point from me and the team. That's where the buck stops.